A Black American New Year: The Origins of Black-Eyed Peas. Beans cooked in America. Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, La Relación, 1542. Cabeza de Vaca repeatedly lists beans as cooked food given or eaten by native peoples. That's in Spanish. The translation says they ate beans and squash and other seeds which they cook. The Gentleman of Elvas Ricayo of Hernando de Soto expedition, written in 1544, describing towns encountered by de Soto. They have much maize, beans, and pumpkins, which they cook for their sustenance. Rodrigo Rangel, Diary of the De Soto expedition, 1540 to 1543. Rangel describes stored foods taken from villages. Translation: They found cooked beans and stewed maize. Beans cooked in America. Luis Hernandez de Bedema, Relación, 1544. Bedema notes indigenous foodways. Translation: They sustained themselves on maize, beans, and squash, all cooked. Thomas Harriot, A Brief and True Report, 1588, said they make broth of beans, peas, and soda together. Black-eyed peas in Iberia. Ibn, 12th century Seville, Kitab al-Fiqh, Book of Agriculture. The lubia is sown in warm soils and requires moderate watering. It improves the earth and is eaten both green and dried. Ibn's Agricultural Encyclopedia is one of the most detailed sources for crops grown in Al-Andalus. Lubia is generally identified by historians and botanists as cowpeas/black-eyed peas, widely cultivated in southern Iberia. Alban, 11th century Toledo, Seville, Kitab al-Qasqa, you see that. Among the summer legumes is the lubia, which grows quickly and benefits the soil when rotated with cereals. Ibn Basal was a court agronomist. His work reflects practical farming in central and southern Iberia, showing cowpeas as a part of the crop rotation systems. Al-Tiganari, late 11th and early 12th century Granada. Lubia thrives in heat and is harmed by cold. It is best planted after the rains of spring. This horticultural text links cowpeas to Mediterranean climatic knowledge consistent with their African origin and Iberian adaptation. How black-eyed peas became symbolic. Survival and reliability equals good fortune. Black-eyed peas were highly drought-tolerant, able to grow in poor soils, productive even in bad years. In medieval Iberia, where famine, war, and drought were real threats, a crop that almost always produced something would naturally be associated with good fortune. A full store of dried peas in the winter meant you had food when others might not. Your household had avoided hunger. The year had been lucky. Prosperity here meant stability, not wealth. Abundance from small seed. Cowpeas produced many pods from a single plant. This visible multiplication made them an intuitive symbol of increased blessing, fertility of land. Medieval symbolic thinking often tied abundance directly to divine favor. A legume that gave much from little fit that worldview naturally. How black-eyed peas became symbolic. The eye is a protective symbol. The dark spot on the pea, the black eye, could be read symbolically as eyes were commonly used as protective symbols against misfortune or envy, similar to the later Mediterranean evil eye traditions. While we can't prove a direct medieval Iberian belief tied specifically to cowpeas, eye symbolism was already widespread in Christian, Jewish, and Islamic cultures of Iberia. So the bean's appearance could reinforce ideas of watchfulness, protection, or warding off harm. Religious meanings across cultures. Medieval Iberia was shaped by Christian, Muslim, and Jewish traditions, all of which valued legumes. In Islamic context, legumes were associated with humility, sufficiency, and God's provision, especially in rural life. In the Christian context, simple foods eaten in fasting periods were linked to moral virtue and divine blessing. In the Jewish context, beans and peas were common in everyday and Sabbath cookie tied to continuity and household prosperity. Shared daily foods often became symbols of continuity and blessing across generations. How black-eyed peas became symbolic. Seasonal transition and the new year, black-eyed peas were harvested at the end of summer, just before the lean months. Eating them at this transition could mark the hope that stored food would last. This mirrors later traditions like New Year legume dishes where peas symbolize luck for the coming year. While we can't document a specific medieval Iberian luck dish, the logic behind it was already present. Association with the poor, but not failure. Unlike luxury foods, black-eyed peas were affordable, common, and essential. In medieval symbolism, foods that kept people alive often carried positive moral weight. Having enough beans meant that you were not cursed by scarcity. How they came to Iberia. Black-eyed peas, cowpeas, reached medieval Iberia through long, gradual contact with Africa rather than a single event. Their movement fits well with what we know about trade, agriculture, and cultural exchange around the Mediterranean. African origins. Black-eyed peas were domesticated in sub-Saharan Africa, probably in the Sahel or West Africa, thousands of years ago. They spread northward into North Africa because they tolerated heat and drought, grew well in poor soils, fit pastoral and mixed farming systems. By classical antiquity, cowpeas were already well known in Egypt and the Maghreb. North Africa to Iberia via Mediterranean networks. The most important step was their movement from North Africa to Iberia. How they came to Iberia. Pre-Islamic contacts, Roman era. Roman trade routes linked Mauritania, Hispania, and the wider Mediterranean. Romans already cultivated several legumes, and cowpeas may have arrived in Iberia in limited quantities during this period, though they were not dominant. Major spread during Al-Andalus, 18th to 15th centuries. The Islamic conquest of Iberia, starting in 711, dramatically increased the exchange of crops. Why this mattered? Muslim farmers actively introduced and promoted African and Eastern crops suited to Iberia's climate. Al-Andalus was closely connected to Morocco, Africa, Tunisia, Egypt, and trans-Saharan trade routes. Cowpeas moved from sub-Saharan Africa to North Africa, then across the Strait of Gibraltar into Al-Andalus. They fit perfectly into irrigated gardens, dryland farming, and crop rotation systems. How they came to Iberia. Agricultural texts and practice. Medieval Arabic agricultural manuals from Al-Andalus described legumes adapted to heat and summer pulses grown alongside cereals. While they don't always name black-eyed peas specifically, cowpeas are consistent with the crops described in archaeobotanical finds from Iberian sites. Adoption by Christian, Muslim, and Jewish communities. Once established, black-eyed peas were spread beyond Muslim farms, became part of everyday rural diets across religious communities, and were valued more for reliability than prestige. After the Christian reconquest, many al-Dalisi agricultural practices and crops remained in use. Why they stayed. Black-eyed peas remained in Iberia because they thrived in hot Iberian summers, improved soil fertility, provided cheap protein, stored well for winter. This practicality ensured their survival even as political control changed. Modern black-eyed pea recipe. Ingredients. Black-eyed peas, water broth, small onion, 2 garlic cloves, smoked ham or turkey wing, salt, pepper, cayenne, and then the instructions: put the peas, water, and broth, onion, garlic, and smoked meat into a pot. Bring to a boil in lower heat and simmer 60 to 90 minutes until the peas are tender. Add salt and pepper near the end. Adjust the seasoning. Serve hot, traditionally with cornbread and greens. This is a medieval Iberian black-eyed pea recipe. Take lubia and boil it until it softens. Then fry onion in good oil with it until it becomes sweet. Add the lubia with a little water, season it with cumin, pepper, and salt. Let it simmer until the flavors unite. It is eaten hot and is strengthening. This wording matches the style of recipes found in Andalusi collections such as Kitab al-Tekiti. Traditions, brief, practical, and focused on technique rather than quantities. Onion and legume stews like this were everyday foods in medieval Iberia.